Last time we were speaking about the fact that we put limits on ourselves. We put limits on what we believe we can achieve, and then we can't achieve those things. But once we break through those limiting beliefs, then we can reach higher levels in all areas. If you say there is no way I can do 10 pull-ups, then there pretty much is no way you're going to do 10 pull-ups. Your belief is going to create your experience. But if you say, I'm sure I can, it might take a bit of work, but I'm sure I can, then that attitude in itself is going to help you. People who are afraid, I used to go hiking a lot, people who are afraid, they're more likely to fall. I'm scared of falling, that's going to make you more likely to fall. Someone who's confident, then they walk with more balance. Baruch Hashem. Woo! Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. So then we said, I think we finished by talking about the examples of children. Children's imagination is wild. Children can sit and play with toys for hours, like, way, and they're so in it, and it's real to them. Very important rule in parenting. You got your kids and they're playing with some kind of toy, and you're like, hey, come to the table, and they don't hear you. It doesn't mean that they're disrespecting you. They just don't hear you. They're so in this world. They're in a world. And then if you go and pull the toy away, they start crying because you've just destroyed a world for that child. So you have to say, hey, go, touch on that, hey, Shimshan, it's time to come now. You can go back to your world. But it's a fantastic thing. And then as we grow older, we lose the ability of creative imagination. To the extent that you can only really imagine something that is in your world of experience. You could imagine flying, but you never do. You never walk along and be like, you might imagine becoming the best NBA basketball player. You might have some fantasy dream about that, but that's in your scope of, I know what, but you'd never really be walking down the street imagining flying across the ocean and, well, it depends what you took, but whatever. I can fly. That's dangerous sort of imagination. But it means we don't believe that we can experience something beyond our realm of experience. You've limited your realm of experience to potatoes. I'm calling it potato thinking from now on. You're a potato thinker. You just got meat, potato, this is my job. I get up at this time, I go to sleep at this time, this is my hobby, I work out this time. Very, very, very difficult to break out of your potato thinking. Even in your dreams, by the way. 99% of what you dream about are your fears and your hopes. That's what you're dreaming now. Fears and your hopes. So we've very, very much limited ourselves. And yet it's a very spiritually harmful thing to do. Because your koach hadimyan, your power of imagination, is one of your most powerful tools that you have in order to reach higher levels of spirituality. We speak about the 4 levels of you. There's the physical, you're a body. There's the emotional, you have emotions, you have a heart. There's mental, and then there's spiritual. But usually when we speak about mental, we think about thoughts. But we said last time that there are 2 types of mental processes. There's thoughts and there's imagination. Difference between thought and imagination? Thoughts have words.
Oh, and images or pictures.
Imagination has pictures, images. And what's more powerful? Images much more powerful than pictures. If you can imagine something. We did the meditation on the balcony. When was it? On Sunday. So I said, imagine you're sitting on the beach and there's a nice cool breeze and you see the waves and it's warm, perfectly warm sun and you're feeling like this. So just picturing that scene can bring you immense calm. But if you read about the scene in a book, you're reading it and he was sitting on the beach, you don't necessarily then have that emotion isn't aroused as much as when you put yourself in that situation and you visualize the situation. So we said, for example, When you pray for the rebuilding of Yerushalayim, which you do 3 times a day, it says that you need to imagine that you're standing in the Beit HaMikdash. Can you do that? For most people it's actually quite hard. But just to be able to stand and breathe and just imagine what it must be, Beit HaMikdash. It's huge. You know what I was thinking of doing? Making a guided meditation for the Shemona Esrei. And you listen to it whilst you're davening. Baruch atah. Like speak it through, and then dung, we'll move on to the next bracha. And then when we get to that one, it will just be, I'll be saying now, look around you, the Leviim. They're all there with their special clothes, playing music. It's the most powerful music, and the incense is going up. And you see the Kohen Gadol with all his things and the miracles. And imagine how good your mincha would be. I was actually going to do this, but you're only allowed to use it once a month. Get a whole virtual reality headset. A mincha virtual reality headset that you're just going through Shemona Esrei, and then you can press when you move on to the next one, and it's got soft music, and it's just like Tachon El Adandas, and you just see this bright light and feel the wisdom coming into you. Wouldn't that be amazing? I think we could do it. I once davened. Have you ever been to the Hall of Notes, our meditation room? You have a meditation room here? And it has music, so we once went and davened with the music on. And it helps. Helps your davening. So if you had music and pictures, you get taken away into a different world. The example we use is when you're watching a movie, you lose all sense of self. If it's a good movie, you lose all sense of self. You're not sitting there thinking about your emails and checking your phone. In fact, you don't even realize you're sitting there. You're just caught up in the movie. And then the movie ends and you're like, oh, I'm here. Because you were taken away somehow. So imagine they could have a movie where you could also smell the smells. You have a theater and you smell the smells. Everything that's happening. They're walking through some slum area, it smells not nice, and it smells. And imagine they had a movie that you can obviously hear the sounds, you can see the sights. But it takes over your sense of smell as well. What if it then took over your sense of your thinking? You just become in that movie. So that's, by the way, what you've done. You've fallen into the movie of your own psyche, and you've forgotten that there's a self in there as well, which is a bad thing. So you've got to remember that there's a self. So we've got physical, emotional, 2 levels of mental, thinking and imagining. Imagining is kind of the gateway into spirituality. It's the gateway into godliness. Because you can't really think about Hashem. You can't think. It says in the Zohar, Bnei Machshava Tova. No thought can really grasp Hashem. Why is that? Because thought is finite. And you think in finite ways. And you have definitions. So you can't apply that to God. Whereas imagination, not quite infinite, but more infinite than thought. Thought is words. Do, 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 do. Imagination is taking you beyond that, and it's the linking, it's the gateway. But we have to be able to use it. You want to be able to use your imagination. Standing there in your tefillah, using imagination. But we lost that power. So what he's telling us is that it's still within us. It's there. We just have to tap back into it. We've lost a lot of playfulness. People aren't playful anymore either. And this is connected to this as well. Children are very playful. Children can just play for hours, make up games, and then we don't. We stop playing because we have responsibilities and we have our pain and we have all our stuff that has basically smothered our youthful playfulness. It's the same idea. We've got to get back to that state of, why can children be playful? What makes children be able to be playful? They have this tamimut, they have this simplicity and playfulness. Why? Because, hopefully, by the way, sorry if you didn't, but because they feel safe because of their parents, hopefully. It's one of your major roles as a parent to make your children feel safe so that they're free to play. If the children are all a bit nervous, I'm going to get shouted at, You've got to make them feel safe so that they can just be playful. They're running around. It's amazing. I know that my dad's watching me, so they've got nothing to worry about. So when we grow up, we realize that the world isn't necessarily safe, so we lose that. So when you get older, you have to say, hold on, there is Hashem, there's a world to come, there's a bigger perspective, and just try and be safe and playful. But once again, it means going beyond your mind, because we've now categorized the whole world. I like that, I don't like that. That's good, that's bad, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. They said that, I like this. And so we've completely boxed ourselves in, limited ourselves. We're trying to break through. Break on through to the other side, and break on through to the other side. Break on. That's what we're trying to do. So he says there was the ultimate mistake of the Jewish people. What was the ultimate mistake of the Jewish people? The golden calf. Wow. The Chet HaEgel. What happened when Moshe went? They were basically felt left alone, so they said we need a physical image. We need something that we can physically grasp. And they made an idol. This is why idol worship in Judaism is so bad, because it's saying I need some physical thing to grasp onto. Why? Because my imagination isn't big enough. My mind isn't big enough to start going beyond thought and beyond my borders. So I need this to look at. And that was the biggest mistake they ever made. The purpose of our life is to have a personal, intimate, palpable, direct experience of God. So to build a calf, you're like missing the whole purpose. Where did that begin, by the way? Began in the Garden of Eden. So they messed up big time in the Garden of Eden. They listened to the snake, at which point selfish ego pleasure was born. I want to be godlike. I want to be great. I want to eat that fruit just for my own selfish pleasure. So they became very connected to their selfish pleasure. And then they realized, we messed up. So what did they do? They hid from Hashem. They hid from Hashem. So what did Hashem do? Did Hashem get angry? Did Hashem shout at Adam and Eve? Didn't shout at them. He said, Ayeka. Where are you? Where are you? Did Hashem know where they were? So what's he doing?
Giving them a chance.
Hashem is saying to them, if this is the relationship you want with me, where we can be detached and not deeply connected, then I'll play along with that. I don't want that. I want a direct relationship. Rabbi Berger always says, a relationship is only as strong as the one who wants it least. If you're in love with a girl and she hates you, there's no love relationship there. It's as strong as the one who wants it least. That's how strong a relationship is. So Hashem wants the relationship with you, so it depends on you how much you want the relationship. The more you want the relationship, that's how strong your relationship is going to be. So if you're going to start hiding in the garden and not have a direct relationship, Hashem says, okay, so that's what a relationship is. Ayek, where are you? And then it happened again at the golden calf. The golden calf, we said, Hashem says, I want a personal relationship with you. They even said, by the way, at the beginning, the revelation was meant to be God speaks to Moses and everyone hears God speaking to Moses. That was what it was meant to be. And the people said, no, we don't want to hear God speaking to Moses. We want him to speak to us directly. Ritzaneinu lirat et malkeinu. We want to experience our king. We want to see our king. So they did really well. But then they messed up. They said, okay, but we can't do it on our own. So what are we going to do now? Because many people say to me, when I'm davening, who am I davening to then? What am I davening? If I don't have some form of something, I can't imagine what Hashem is, so how can I daven to that? Who am I speaking to? Infinite consciousness. Okay, great, but I can't relate to infinite consciousness. You got to love Hashem. Did you know you have to love Hashem? It's very hard. How do you love infinite consciousness? I love my daughter. She's that big, and she's there, and she does this. I see her. I can hug her. I can speak to her. It's really nice. I love her. She's very great. But Hashem is hard. So there are two answers to this question. The first answer is we don't grasp Hashem through our mind. We grasp Hashem through our feelings. That's how you grasp it. Leis Machshava Tova klal. Thought can't grasp God. But your emotions can grasp God. Yira, awe, reverence, ahava, love. We can start tapping into these emotions. That's how we actually grasp God. And how do you do that? Our sages teach us. Dimyan. Imagine how it would feel if the Rosh Hashiva walked in the room now. How would you feel? You'd be very excited. I would. I'd be like, oh, Rosh. Especially if he sat down and said, carry on, Dov Ber. I'd be like, I can't. I'd be like, oh, okay. I'd be very excited. So if I feel like that when the Rosh Hashiva walks into the room, then Kal V'Chaima, even more so when I get into my imagination, my life, that Hashem is in there, I'm speaking to Hashem. You should try this. Mincha today, you're davening Mincha, and maybe you're not concentrating so much. Imagine then the Rosh Hashiva came and stood right next to you. And like David HaMelech stood on the other side of you. How good would your Mincha suddenly be? You'd be like, when we were young in England, we used to have fantasy football team. Who are my 10 people on my vote? Now we have fantasy minyan. So, gonna have the Baal Shem Tov, Moshe Feinstein, Chayzer of Lublin, the Arizal, Abraham Yitzhak Yaakov, amazing, the fantasy team. So sometimes when I'm davening mincha, I'm not really feeling it. I just imagine I'm surrounded by all these great tzaddikim, and then I get very excited. That's using koach dimyan. That's a good use of dimyan. Imagine what you would feel like. And then you can take that and then you can then push it onto, wow, if I feel like that about these people, then of course I feel like that about Hashem. But then he says a crazy thing. He said we've got to be real with our level. And if you need to have an image, I guess it's saying the same thing. He is actually saying the same thing. If you need to try and have an image of Hashem, you can try and imagine. You can imagine, and he says the Kisei HaKavod, the throne of glory. So whatever that means for you, like imagine a big white light in the sky. And there's a throne, a big throne. It's good that we've got that bris chair around, because it helps you think about Hashem. Where is it? Anyway, so you can start imagining. You can't imagine God in a form. Don't imagine an old man in the sky. Although, from reading this a few times, I think he would say that it's not the worst thing ever, as long as you obviously know that that's not Hashem. You're just using it as a stepping stone. But he didn't say that. He said the throne of glory. Imagine the throne of glory. Imagine a great white light. Imagine that. So that if that's going to help you feel like Hashem is really actually palpably there, then you can use it for now, knowing that that's not Hashem. You know it's not Hashem. You're just using it. I told you the story last week about my daughter, and I said to her, do you speak to Hashem at night? You know, I say good night to you. Do you speak to Hashem? She goes, yeah, a bit. And I said, but then she said to me one day, but what is Hashem? What am I speaking to? And I said, that's a great question. What do you feel you're speaking to? And she said, a big white blob. And I said to her, that's okay. I like that. For now. She was about 8 or 9 at the time. That was pretty good. Big white blob. But then I suddenly thought, I was like, hold on a second. How does that big white blob make you feel? Is it a nice, warm, safe feeling? Is it scary? And she actually said to me, it's actually a bit scary. The white blob was a bit, and I was like, why? And she said, because we learned in the Torah that God got angry and killed some people, and, you know. And I was like, oh, no. So I sat there. This was actually on Purim. I had quite a bit to drink. It was amazing. I always have the best conversations with my children on Purim. Isn't it? I do.
So when you're drunk.
So I said to her, the Torah teaches that Hashem is Avinu, Hashem is our Father. Oh no, I didn't go there yet. I said, can you try and do this? Can you imagine a white blob, but it's got pink heart eyes and a smile? Like an emoji God. And she said, okay, I'll try that. And she did it, and I said, later I said, how was that? And she goes, it's better. but it's still a bit weird, a blob with So then I had this chab, I had this understanding that God is our Father, our loving Father. So I said, what I want you to do is basically imagine my face on the white blob. Just a very faint image of my face on the blob. Now that's a fair thing to do because Hashem is our Father. The deeper Sfarim, our holy books, teach us that the only reason we have a Father is so that we can understand what it means when it says Hashem is our Father. So hopefully you had a good father. If you didn't, I know lots of people who struggle with God because they struggle with their father. You are your children's representative of God. You got to understand, it's very, very important. How you are with your children, that's their relationship with God. So I said to her, how do you feel when I walk in the room? And she's like, me and my daughter love each other, say fun, she's excited, tells me all about her day, all her issues, she talks to me, it's amazing. Me and my daughter have the closest, amazing, beautiful relationship. So I said, how do you feel? And she's like, amazing. So I said, good. So I want you to imagine your white blob can still have pink heart eyes and a smile, but it's got a little my face on it. And how does that? And I spoke to her a few days later and I said, how's the talking to Hashem? And she's like, yeah, much better, feel nice, warm, amazing. So that's good for an 8-year-old. And it worked, it's very good. And I said to her, by the way, you do know that Hashem isn't a white blob with pink eyes. And she goes, yeah, of course he's not. So she got it, but she needed to use that imagination to feel anything. So the Pirzets Rebbe is saying, even us at our age, we can do something like that. Imagine a bright white light in the sky. You know what? I stand at the front in the Beis Midrash, and above the Aron HaKodesh there's that skylight, and sometimes there's light pouring down into the skylight. So I kind of look up into that. I feel like Hashem's like, feel like I'm in the spotlight of Hashem. I do other things in the middle of my Shemona Esrei. I imagine that I'm standing on a very, 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 very tall pillar above the mountains, and I'm looking around me, and the mountains are below me, and the stream, everything below, and I'm standing on this tall pillar, and there's a spotlight shining on me, and I'm like, it's very powerful.
Where did you learn about that?
I just made it up. From the Pirzets saying that you should use imagination. So that was the one that came to me. How am I going to feel yira? How am I going to feel awe? Because I'm standing on top of this pillar with the mountains below me, and I've got the spotlight on me. And it's like, I'm praying for the whole world. I'm praying for the universe up here. So people think, oh, it sounds a bit childish. And the answer is, it is. But it works. Often people say to me, you know what, you're so childish, you get excited by the smallest things. And I say, yeah, that's why I'm happier than you. Why does it take you so much to get excited? I get excited every day when I get on my bike. I'm like giggling like a little girl. It's amazing. Woo! I love going on. My wife says to me, can you go and get 6 water pack from the... I'm like, I'll do it. And you're driving around and people are like, you're such a baby. I'm like, yep. You're old. Rabbi Nachman speaks about this a lot. Don't get old. You could be 15 years old and old. You could be 95 years old and still young. Because a young person is seeing the world like this. Big imagination. Creative. Amazing. And it's not fake. Because the world of Hashem is a very beautiful, majestic, radiant world that we've been cut off from all our stuff. Hashem, that's how I voted this week. So Mincha, I want you to choose something to imagine. Choose something to imagine. Standing on a pillar, maybe even flying, something. Just use your imagination like a kid and see if that can enhance your emotional connection to your prayer. Bezos Hashem.